A relatively short video from a session at West Bexington trying to catch plaice. I was here at the end of May at a mark referred to as Swyre or the White House. For those who don't know, this is at the western or shallower end of Chesil. It can be a bit hit or miss, but usually you can catch something, even if it means you have to go for mackerel, and in the summer it can be pretty prolific for that species. However, I'm not that keen on feathering unless I have to, so I'll be spending most of my time fishing on the bottom with ragworm or lugworm. But first of all, I need to pay for the parking, which as you can see is pretty steep. It's £15 if you're staying for over 4 hours unless you're fishing into the evening, when it's free parking from 6 o'clock to 8 in the morning. Signs weren't good, since some anglers had packed up, told me they hadn't had a bite, and had only seen 2 mackerel caught before they left. It's a bit of a walk from the car park to where I'm fishing, and a coastal path had been covered up by shingle. I'm fishing close to where you've got a drainage pipe from the marsh behind the shingle. On Chesil, to stand a better chance of catching plaice, you really need to be casting onto a clay bed, and you're more likely to find that if there's a lake or a marsh behind a beach where you're fishing. Although conditions looked ideal to me, I had been warned in the tackle shop I visited earlier that plaice had not been coming out. I was quick to set up and cast one rod out with a 3-hook clip down rig. My other rig, ready for casting, is a loop rig with beads, with black lug on the bottom hook and ragworm on the top. I wound in the rig which is already out there for a quarter of an hour to find that the bait had not been touched, so I'm just clipping up again and recasting that out. As I'm about to place my rod in the tripod, I'll run through the locational details. My previous Chesil videos covered a regional setting, here I'm going straight in onto the big beach. Having identified the main venues, I'm just zooming in onto the West Bexington area. West Bexington is closer to Bridport than it is to Weymouth, and is between Burton, Bradstock and Abbotsbury. Plaice can be caught either side of a car park, but by walking quite a distance. I prefer to go to the western end, walking between about a third and a halfway to Cogden. Zooming in on the area, you can just about make out where the nature reserve is in relation to the car park. There's a massive reed bed here and a little bridge with a footpath which leads up to Swyre. I've indicated where I fished for this video. There isn't a massive tidal pull and I am allowing my rigs to drift a bit. I can always switch over to leads with wires if I want to slow this down. Long distance casting is required here and you do need to search the ground to find a plaice. Since I'm expecting the session to be quite slow, I have brought a third rod along. I'll be using that one for feathering. I'm not really expecting plaice until a tidal flow slows to change direction or right at the top of a tide. There can be massive shoals of mackerel here in late summer, but they haven't really appeared in numbers yet. Nevertheless, a few chucks with feathers still helps to pass the time. I tend to use 1 ounce leads and smaller feathers than most, close on being sabikis. I'll periodically give it a couple of chucks, but not waste too much time on this method. I think it's going to be a long wait for any action on the bottom, if at all. Now there's a bit of surprise. I bring a fish in and I hadn't seen the bite. I had switched the reel line over to mono just to try something different. Had I been using braid, I would have probably spotted the bite. However, I'm happy with this since it avoids a blank. It's a gurnard of some sort, but I'm not sure of the species. It's taken lugworm rather than the rag. I like to drag my baits now and again, particularly when plaice fishing. When using mono, it's not quite as easy as when you've got braid as a reel line. Because of a stretch in the line, you've got to move your rod that much further back. Same goes for striking. Whilst waiting for bites, I've got plenty of time to bait up another rig. Here I'm baiting up a 3-hook wire boom rig. I'm resting the loop rig for the time being, going over to using that boom rig. So a quick look at the rigs I've now got ready to cast in. Normally I can generally rely on one of these two to pick up a plaice. It's approaching the top of the tide and it's now starting to cloud over, making it a little bit cooler. Well, something's taken the bait. Maybe a spider crab, if not a fish. Fortunately, I've not had any problems with those yet. Whilst rebaiting, I noticed my line goes slack on the other rod. I've left what I was doing, wound down, and I thought I was into a fish. However, having just thought that I was lucky to avoid the spider crabs. Unfortunately, one comes in. Apparently, they are edible, and this one would be sizable. They're not for me though. I then spot my first proper bite. Annoyingly though, the fish comes off. Since the tidal pull had stopped, I had changed my reel line back to braid. I'm now thinking that at least on one of my rods I should have stayed with mono. Since the tidal pull has increased again, I'm going to change that back over to reel line with mono. I'm now trying to get back into the habit of swapping when conditions dictate. Carrying spare spools can be a bit of a pain, particularly if you're walking long distances, but since I've normally got them with me, I should really be changing more often. As the session progressed, I almost gave up hope. I had packed away my other two rods, then I noticed a bite on one which was still out there. Whilst otherwise occupied, I got a drop back bite on a rod still out there which had the mono line on. And this feels like a pretty decent fish. It's a dead weight, but it doesn't feel like a spider crab. Since I've not got boots on, I'm going to need to beach this. The fish had got itself wrapped round the line, which is why it took a bit of time to get in. Anyway, it's a bit of a result, since it's my first decent smooth hound of the year. I'd rather a plaice, but I'm more than happy with this capture. I was going to call it a day, but I now have to fish on for another hour or so. The smooth hound was on the 3-hook clip down rig, but I'm going to swap over back to using the loop rig. No bites on loop rig, so it's back to using the 3-hook clip down version. I quickly get what appeared to be another slack liner. It hasn't pulled round again, so I think the fish might be swimming towards me. I wind down and then set the hook. It feels like another good fish. I'm being a bit careful not to get my feet wet, but also to look after the fish. I didn't grab this one by the tail since it hadn't wound itself round the line. Another very lively smooth hound, and it took a bit longer to get the hook out. Well, it was a good end to a pretty long day. I didn't get the hoped for plaice, and there were no mackerel showing either. However, I was pleased with what I did catch, since it could have quite easily have been a blank. I just have to come back and try again for the flatfish.